Happy Tuesday evening, everybody, and welcome to the Nana Boss Continuum. Thank you all for being here this evening. We have an amazing guest, but before we get to our guest, I just want to make a couple of little announcements. I am this close to 700 subscribers. This close. So what I would like to challenge everybody is if you can help me get to my 700 subscribers before my 100th episode celebration next week. So I've got a show next week with Matt, my son Matt, and my oldest son Michael. They're going to come on and they are going to celebrate my 100th episode with me. And I'm so excited. And I just hope everybody is going to be here. It will be at 9:00. Unfortunately, they both have real little ones still at home. So we did have to move the show to a 9:00 slot, but it'll be worth it. I promise you. If you think Matt and I are fun together, wait until you see the three of us and how much fun we have together. Lots of trolling, lots of razzing, and I'm usually the brunt of it, but it's okay because I'm still the mom. So please help me get to my 700 subscriber mark. I'd really like to hit that right before my 100th episode. It would really mean a lot for all of you to help me out. I just want to say hi to everybody really quickly. We've got Val in the house. We've got Gary Spikes in the house tonight. Crystal J. I saw both of you guys on Krista's live that she did from the Dogman conference out there in Texas. I saw you guys there. I'm glad that you made it, and I hope you guys had a great time. Hey there, Lenny. Good to see you. Let's see who else. Mr. Brian Barber is also in the house. How are you, Brian? Bobby Younce, thanks for being here. Let's see. Who else? I know you guys are going to file in. Griff, hey, how are you, Griff? I'm glad you're here. I'm so glad everybody's here. Catherine Gay, nice to see you here. Jim's camera at dawn. I still love that. I love that. Let's see. Anybody else that I missed? Hey, Donald Fuller. Good to see you here. Let's see. Brown Dwarf. Jane, you're here. That means Garrel's going to be here any minute as well. I always get a twofer with you guys. It's awesome. Thank you guys for being here and all of your support. I really appreciate each and every one of you. For just, love and kindness. We got to spread more love and kindness. Oh, there is Garrel. I knew it. Hey, Roger, good to see you as well. Okay, so I'm just going to ask for one more thing from you guys tonight. Aleks is going to be here for an hour. Maybe we'll get lucky and get a little bit more than an hour. But let's keep all of our questions, put them all in caps, and then at the very end, I'll be starring your questions. And then at the end of the show, the last few minutes of the show, then we'll hit Aleks with all of our questions. So I just wanted to make a few announcements. Thank you guys so much for helping me out with that. Okay, so let's get into it. All right. Mr. Aleksandar Petakov is a documentary filmmaker, adventurer, and avid outdoorsman constantly searching for the unknown. Traveling across North America and the world, Aleks has looked into various cryptozoological creatures like Sasquatch, the Loch Ness Monster, the Lake Champlain Monster, mystery big cats, as well as other phenomena and mysterious places like the Bridgewater Triangle, and done many documentaries on these topics and more. Aleks has chronicled over 50 Bigfoot sightings in his home state of New Hampshire. He is a small town monsters crew member and has searched far and wide for Sasquatch in the Bigfoot Beyond the Trail documentary series on YouTube. And now his latest films, Dark Coast, Hunt for the Alaskan Bigfoot Origins, and Dark Coast, Hunt for the Alaskan Bigfoot Into the Fog, and Beyond the Trail, Alaskan Bigfoot Highway. Please welcome with me, Mr. Aleksandar Petakov.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on again, Marty. Nice to be back.
You could come anytime, but you have itty bitty bits of time.
Yeah,
You're
it's
just
it's
so
been
busy.
there's been a lot going on. Obviously, I've been away for quite a while. My first half of the summer, I was up in Alaska, and between Alaska and Canada, and that sort of thing. So, time is definitely is always a struggle with me. It's a lot of prioritization of time, and have to find time to do stuff here and there. But somehow it works for now.
Yeah, I don't know how. I just don't. I don't know how you do it. I mean, Matt, seeing him do the like local stuff and how you, but I mean, this last trip had to, I cannot wait to pick your brain about this last trip that you had because it was like a marathon. It was definitely not a sprint, huh?
Yeah, it was just nonstop go. I mean, I spent an entire month in Alaska, so I was there from basically early June up until about like the 8th of June to about the 9th of July is when I ended up driving back. And I drove back and forth to Alaska, so you got to put in another like 2 weeks for the drive up and down combined. So that's why it was like a month and a half. It was just a wild, wild time. I mean, I got to go with my brother. I got to go with my fiance as well. I went up with my brother and then back with my fiance. So it was really nice to be able to share that colossal drive, across the continent from the East Coast all the way to Alaska with, two very special people in my life, of course,
Yeah.
which was awesome.
Because not a lot of people get an opportunity to do a trip like that. I mean, it's like the trip of a lifetime to
Yeah,
see everything all the way across our entire country and Canada and get to Alaska is,
I know. It was like a unbelievable feeling. I mean, I spent so much time planning this in the months beforehand, of course. And it was just, you got to worry about a million little things. You got to get this permit, that, make sure
yeah,
you're good with the Canadians, all this stuff. I mean,
right.
it was crazy. And then that moment when we finally hit the Alaska sign. So when you actually get to the border between Alaska and Canada, there's actually like a, I think it's about 10 miles or so, maybe more, of a no man's land where you kind of go past the Canadian border, and then until you get to the U.S. side, there's just nothing but wilderness. And there's actually a cut that they cut through the trees so you can see, and that's where the Alaska sign is, technically before you get to the border crossing. But I remember hitting
Wow.
that sign, and it's like unbelievable feeling. I mean, there's no feeling better than that. Really, it's like this sense of accomplishment. Like, wow, it's hard to imagine, and that's something I talk about. It's like the size of this continent, how unbelievably enormous it is, and how hard it is to actually understand.
Yeah.
I've considered myself pretty well traveled up until this point, and I had no idea it would be, that the scale of what you're dealing with. So knowing you go from the East Coast, like I can drive from my house all the way to Alaska, that is a crazy feeling. Because that's a place I flew before, right? When I went last year, I
Right.
flew up there, so it's different. You fly, you're kind of detached. You could fly to Europe. You got an ocean dividing it, but anyone basically living in the lower 48 could get in their car and drive to Alaska. This is a really hard concept to understand.
I know. Just real quick, Lenny, thank you so much for that. That's such an amazing thank you. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. Thank you. Wow. 49.99.
Wow, that's
Holy
awesome.
cow. Thank you so much, Lenny. Um okay, so let's talk about a little bit. Now the last time you were here, you and I got real in depth about drones
Yep.
and permits, and we talked filmmaking, and I want to do a little bit of that tonight too, because I'd love to hear some of the interesting things that you've had to actually, you know, in preparation for this, this series that you're doing, or that
Sure.
you did do, that you're releasing.
Right.
So what kind of things did you run into that were strange and weird?
Oh man, where does the list start? I mean, first of all, you're just talking to a lot of different people and a lot of different moving pieces. So, my month up in Alaska, I spent 2 weeks of which were spent at Area A, the so-called
Hmm.
place that we call Area A on the Kenai Peninsula, and the other two were spent one in interior Alaska and the other kind of more towards the Anchorage area, and then of course the drives up, which were, as I mentioned, 2 weeks, kind of 1 week apiece on each side, depending on how it kind of flips. But I'm talking to different researchers. Like I spent a lot of time with Larry Beans Baxter, who's a Alaskan former retired police officer and a Bigfoot investigator. He's been in a lot of the videos. He was on the first ever expedition to Port Chatham that was documented back in like 2018. So he's done a lot. He wrote the book on the Port Chatham. So he's a super great resource. And again, I got to go out with him pretty much almost the whole month, which was really cool.
Oh,
Lots of other
wow.
people, and we were up there for an event called the Boreal Bigfoot Expo as well, which happened right when we got up in Alaska. And that was up in Fairbanks, which is pretty far north, kind of in the interior of Alaska. So there's a lot of negotiating with people and logistics, getting all people. So I had people flying out to Alaska to meet us that I had to pick up and then bring when we were going to Area A. I had my brother with me, as well as my buddy Damon Irons, who is a certified drone pilot, and he's the guy doing all the thermal drone work in the series, as well as Rebecca Slick from the Olympic Project. We had to do a swap. People were flying out, other people were flying in. So there's just a lot of logistics to deal with. But a lot of the other stuff was just the paperwork and international traveling. So I mean, I had to drive
Mhm.
from obviously the U.S., the lower 48, to Alaska, and the only way to do that is through Canada. So one of the strangest things I dealt with, and not really strange, but I actually had a firearm with me. I had just a basic pump shotgun that's featured in some of the videos as
Mhm.
kind of bear defense. Now Canada has some very interesting gun laws, we'll put it that way. So it was actually, I was surprised how lenient the whole process was. I had to get a permit, and I basically had to have it locked in the car. And it was actually kind of interesting. I had to get an exit permit leaving the U.S. with this firearm, because as you're taking a
Oh,
personal effect abroad and then bringing it back to the U.S. But once you get all your paperwork kind of squared away, it's really not difficult to deal with. But that was a very interesting process, because I spent a lot of time making phone calls to the Canadian government before that, because they're always changing laws, especially when it comes to firearms. And I won't get into that, but it's just there's always something going on. So what you may read on their website
mhm.
may have changed,
Right.
depending on what legislation has been passed. So I wanted to make sure I was all squared away. So that was an interesting one to deal with. Just a lot of stuff like that. Obviously, passports and making sure I had proof that I was going up to Alaska to do work, essentially, so that the Canadians didn't think I was just trying to get into the country. And they were very lenient. I just read a lot of horror stories beforehand from people saying, "Oh, we got turned around at the
Mhm.
border because they didn't think our story was good enough," or they wouldn't let us through with the firearms. So I really had to make sure everything was in order. And I had printed out like my contract that I had from the conference that we were showing our films at the Boreal Bigfoot Expo, like just to show them, like, no, I really am going to a Bigfoot conference. Here's the official schedule, like, just to prove it to them. And that actually came into play when we crossed into Alaska. It was really funny. At the U.S. side, the U.S. border agent, he's asking my brother and I, like, "Oh, what are you guys coming up to Alaska for?" I'm like, "Honestly, we're here to look for Bigfoot." He's like, "Oh yeah?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go. Actually, I'm on my way to a Bigfoot conference in Fairbanks right now. Literally right after we cross the border." He's like, You know a guy named Michael Thompson?" I said, "Yes, I do. He's going to be at the conference." He's an Alaskan Bigfoot researcher. He's a former border agent, so he used to live right on that Alaska Canada border. A lot of his work, he's got a website called Sasquatch Tracker, and we had interviewed him previously in Alaska. But it was so funny that this border guy, as soon as I said I knew him, he's like, "Oh yeah, go ahead, you're good to go in." And it was like
Then all
it was a funny thing.
you're like, oh, now you're best friends, right?
Well, it was, and that was kind of, I talked about that in the Alaska Bigfoot Highway documentary, because that wasn't the only coincidental incident. There was another one where we were in the Yukon Territory in Canada, and we visited this little wildlife museum kind of along the Alaska Highway, and I was asking him about Bigfoot. Oh, did I cut out there for a minute?
You're good.
Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I thought it froze for a second, so maybe it's on my end. But so I'm asking the lady who works in this museum about Bigfoot, and she says, "Oh yeah, you should talk to this guy named Red Grossinger." I'm like, "Well, he's going to be at the Bigfoot conference too." So it's like along the way, driving up to Alaska, we had all these things happen. People I was going to be meeting at this conference, which was just really funny. And I ended up interviewing both Michael and Red, and they're in the Alaska Bigfoot Highway documentary, and that
Yes.
video just documents our whole journey, basically from the start of the Alaska Highway in British Columbia all the way through to Alaska, and all the
Mhm.
Bigfoot related stuff that kind of coincidentally happened along the way. But yeah, to kind of go back to your original question, there's just a lot of organization. I mean, I have so many documents and schedules and stuff like that, just because sometimes things change. You get in
Mhm.
you meet a new witness. Like at the conference, I had this happen. A couple of people I talked to, and that kind of changed some of my immediate plans. Someone's like, "Oh, would you mind taking me out to the spot of where you found this thing?" And then that kind of
Yeah.
turns into its own segment. So you got to leave a little bit of leeway just in case something like that happens. So yeah, it's just a lot of planning. Plans change, but for good and bad at times. So
Yeah.
it was a heck of a trip. Definitely a trip of a journey, or a trip of a lifetime. I've always wanted to drive up there, and I'm just really glad I got the chance to do it now. Because I don't know if I'll ever be able to do something like that again. So
Yeah. You never
it
know.
was like a perfect storm of events.
I have to say, the Bigfoot Highway is Alaskan Bigfoot Highway film. It just came out yesterday, right? Yesterday or Sunday? Like
That one came
a
out
day, like a day
two
ago.
weeks ago. The one that just came out is
Oh no,
called is
yes, you're right. My apologies.
it's I believe me, I literally had to look at my schedule to see what was coming, because they're we have a schedule now where they're coming out like very close in proximity, so it's hard for me to keep
Yeah.
track of which one's which.
Yeah, so a
Uh,
month ago, Dark Coast Hunt for the Alaskan Bigfoot Origins
yes,
came out a month ago, which
right.
was amazing. And then it was 2 weeks ago that Bigfoot Beyond the Trail, Alaska Bigfoot Highway
Yes.
came out. And then 2 days ago, it was Dark Coast Hunt for the Alaskan Bigfoot Into the Fog.
Yes, yeah. So I can explain that. So while I was up there, I was continuing filming my usual Bigfoot Beyond the Trail series, and that's kind of what the Alaska Bigfoot Highway is. And there's two more Bigfoot Beyond the Trails that'll be from Alaska that came from that trip. But a large part of that trip, the primary motivation was the Dark Coast series, which is basically a continuation of that Alaskan coastal Sasquatch parts one and two from last year, where we
Mm-hmm.
went to that location, because I knew I wanted to return to that location, of course, and continue the research, just try to see what else we could improve on, things like that. So that's where Dark Coast comes in, and that's going to be about a 6-part series. So that'll kind
Oh,
of come out through to
awesome.
the end of the year. So because we have other stuff like on the STM channel, I'm not the only one obviously doing videos. We've got Eli's got his own series. We have Seth has his own series. This coming Sunday, they're releasing the first On the Trail of Bigfoot film that came out in 2018. So it's the first time it's ever going to be public. You could only really watch on Amazon before now. So it's like there's a lot of stuff going on. So we have this crazy schedule. So I always have to check, make sure, is it my video this week? So it's like a crazy turnaround. So it's definitely been
It
a lot, but
really
it's a lot of
is.
Alaska stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't been back that long and you've already got 3 films out. Like from this trip
Yeah.
alone. It's wild.
Yep, and like I said, that'll pretty much take me to the end of the year, and we do have some British Columbia stuff as well, because we went to British Columbia in May, month before I left for Alaska. We did like the whole crew. We flew to British Columbia and did like a crew-wide trip in British Columbia, and there's going to be a lot of videos coming out from that. Not only from me, Eli's doing like an Ogopogo documentary, lake monster
Wow.
stuff. I'm doing more of the Bigfoot stuff. Seth is doing an On the Trail of Bigfoot Origins film, kind of talks about the origins of the whole Sasquatch mythos in British Columbia. So that was like a month before Alaska, which doesn't even feel possible. But it was the busiest period of my life. Between April and August, it was like the busiest period of my entire life. I couldn't believe it, actually, but that's how it went.
Yeah. And I bugged you and I felt so bad because I had heard a rumor. Somebody was like, oh, Small Town Monsters is going to be at Gatlinburg and Aleks is going to be there.
Yes.
And I'm like, are
Uh-oh.
you sure about that? I'm like, I don't think so. Oh no, he's going to be there. And I'm like, Aleks, are you going to be there? You're like, I'm in Alaska. I'm not going to
Yeah.
be there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just bothered this poor man on his trip to Alaska.
No, it's totally fine. I think I ended up getting back from Alaska like a few days before the conference happened. And obviously Seth and a bunch of the crew was there. And I went last year because I spoke at the Gatlinburg Smoky Mountain Conference. But I would have been exhausted. There's no way I would have been able to pull that off. So
No way.
we got home and I was like, yeah, I need about like a month to just chill out, start doing the work, and then
Yeah,
relax. But I heard it was a great time.
it
Eli
was.
and Seth and everyone else said it was awesome, and it was
It
definitely fun
was.
last year. So I'd love to be able to go in the future.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It really was. There was, it was just the only thing is that I mean, that was the first time I'd ever been to Gatlinburg, and I was very like, holy cow! Look at all the people, look at all the traffic, and then it was almost like I had this like PTSD because I'm like, whoa, hold up, are
Yeah,
we in Miami Beach right now?
I
Because this is what
know
it looks like
it's.
in Miami Beach, okay?
I've heard it characterized as like a kind of like a hillbilly Las Vegas in the mountains, Gatlinburg, and
Yes,
it's just so it
yes.
was. I was shocked too because I hadn't been to the Smoky Mountains since like 2009 or 10. I did a backpacking trip there in high school, and we backpacked through the Smokies. And I think we only passed. I don't even think we went to Gatlinburg, so I'd never actually been until last summer when I went out there, and I flew to Chattanooga, and then I went hung out with Tony from the confessionals, and then I
Mhm.
went to Gatlinburg. So the next day, I slept in the Smoky Mountains, and I drove into Gatlinburg. I'm like, where am I? Everything's all built up, and there's like tourist stuff. There's an aquarium and
It's
Ripley's, believe
unbelievable.
it or not. But it was cool.
And
It was a really fun event. But
I
it's an
could
interesting
not
town.
I could not get anybody to do any of the real fun stuff like roller coasters or like zip lining, or everybody was like, no, no, no. And I'm like, come on.
Come on,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Oh, that's too bad.
man.
There's a
So
lot. There's a lot to do there for sure. It's
there
definitely
is.
not what I expected from the national park because it was very busy. Even because I went in and I drove from Gatlinburg to the North Carolina side, and I did some solo backpacking before the conference in the North Carolina section. It was a lot less crowded, but that main drive between Cherokee, North Carolina, and Gatlinburg it was a lot of tourists. I was like, wow, this is this is
It
wild.
it blows your mind, right? You just can't
Yeah,
imagine like where are all these people coming from? Where are all these people staying? Where are all these like it's
I know.
crazy. You just don't.
It's I think it's because that area, it's geographically, it's not far from the South, right? I mean, it's
Mhm.
very close to the Midwest, so people from Kentucky,
Yeah.
Illinois, those areas are able to get down pretty quickly.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I think it's just the central location. I
Yeah.
heard the Smoky Mountains is like the most visited national park in the country, I
Yeah.
believe.
Okay, so I only had one question that I wrote down because I have to know. Because I know that at some point you had just made a decision that you were going to start journaling and documenting everything. How did you do? I need to know.
Okay,
How did
so
it go?
it went well for the first week for sure, and then there was a few. I actually we ended up a lot of us got sick out at the cabin. There was
Oh
something going around, and it
no.
was we had so we were out there for 14 days, and we had almost the entire time it was raining, and it was like
Oh my gosh.
40, 50 in the 40s and the 50s degree wise. So it was not, it really you get the meaning of the coastal rainforest very well. And so we ended up getting sick the second week. A bunch of us, we all like fell like dominoes to the
Oh my
sickness.
gosh.
But yeah, I did try to keep it as much as I could, and it was just kind of like every day I forced myself to write a little bit just so I understood what was going on that day. Like if I when I'm editing, if I have something I need to reference, I can say, okay, this happened on day three because I have just a bunch of these files on my computer and there's so much of it. It can be really hard to keep track of, especially if
Hmm.
sometimes like these cameras, these audio recorders, they won't have the correct date unless you format it. So it'll be like, oh my god, all the audio file says it's 1968 on it, like
Oh my
because it's like the
goodness.
maybe the factory default
Right.
setting for the date. So that was crazy. But yeah, I tried to keep it as consistently as I could, and it all ended up just being, even if it was like a little page, just something,
That's wonderful.
today we saw a humpback whale, or today we saw orcas, just all the little things that happen. And especially if anything interesting happened, possible wood knock, we would throw that in there too and just put that in the journal, just so I could kind of have it documented more for
Hmm.
myself, I guess, than really anything else.
Right. I mean, so how many terabytes did you guys have data? I gotta know. Come on, you know me. I
Yeah.
geek out on all this stuff. So
Oh,
I gotta know. How many terabytes?
I think all in all, that whole month and a half, it was like 1.9 terabytes
Wow.
with just some of that footage. Yeah, so there was that, and because I know that drive, I have a 5 terabyte drive that the Alaska stuff was on, and I'm already over half capacity because once I start editing, I keep all the files on that drive as well. So it just ends up adding up, and 3 projects in, and it's already more than halfway through 5 terabytes. But yeah, I'd say about 2 terabytes of just footage alone. So
Holy
um,
cow.
there's a lot, because it's not only the full Dark Coast, but those 3 different Beyond the Trails, all the
Yeah.
interviews. I mean, I interviewed maybe like a dozen people or so between the whole trip, and just all the other footage and everything, and between cameras and GoPros and thermal devices, drone footage, like, and all the other people filming, like they would give me their footage. So
Oh,
it's
right.
like there's just a
Did,
lot there.
did you have to kind of cycle out people? Because I mean, you're there a month. You're there a month, right? So so you said there was like some people that were kind of like flying in and others would fly out. Were they different like camera operators or different like
It was just people who were helping me with the research. So I mean, all the
got it.
camera stuff is just me and whoever else is with me doing it.
Hmm.
We don't have like any designated camera
Hmm.
people or anything like that. We're not that fancy. I do all my stuff alone. I do all my stunts
Yeah.
alone, right? That's what I like to say. Do the stunts alone. But no. So I had, for example, my brother. He initially drove up with me, and then he spent 2 weeks in Alaska with me, and then he had to fly back. Other obligations, and then my buddy Damon. He managed to fly out for a week, and he's heavily featured in the Dark Coast series. Again, he's the
Hmm.
drone pilot, so he does
Hmm.
all that thermal drone stuff, and just an awesome, great researcher from out in the PNW. And then Rebecca Slick, who's from the Olympic Project as well. So we had like a rotation. I'd drive somebody to the airport, and then another person would fly in, and just because while we were out at the cabin mostly, so I did have to leave Area A once to drive up, and we did like a swap with people. But just working with other people, I got to again work with a lot of the local Alaskan researchers, which was really cool. Larry Beans Baxter, some of the others in the more in the interior, and a guy named Chook who has this awesome channel, Chook's Outdoor Adventures. He's been featured, I think, on that show, Alaska Triangle or whatever. I forget the name of the show, but he's a pretty cool guy. He reached out to me, and we did kind of a collaboration, which was awesome. So just a lot, like I said, a
Cool.
lot of moving pieces when it comes to trying to plan something like that. And when you're doing so much filming and research at the same time, it's all in kind of one long time period, as opposed to just doing it for maybe 5 days. You go to
Hmm.
location, spend some time there, do some interviews. This was all like one after the other. So I had some time in between where I would just take it easy and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And yeah,
A little bit of downtime here and there, but not doesn't sound like very
not
much at
much.
all.
No, no. I mean, even on my birthday, it was July 2nd was my birthday, and that was the day we came back from the cabin, and I spent most of that day in a hotel room doing editing for a different episode that I was doing, just because I hadn't finished it by that point. So even on my birthday, I was doing some work, but it's cool to be
Mhm.
able to do stuff like this. So I'm not really complaining at all. But
Yeah.
you do got to have a little bit of time to decompress between and just hang out and not be running the woods with a thermal for at least a couple of days.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, and you know me, I'm all about geeking out on drone footage and all that. Like those were some of the most breathtaking views. That was awesome. And I also loved how the in Into the Fog that just came out a couple days ago. That when you guys came up into and you got what were you guys heading to when you guys came across that cabin?
So we were kind of looking for the cabin, sort of,
Okay,
because
so you
it
you,
was. It's
you
kind.
knew that there was one up there
We were
somewhere.
told there was one because the property owner Scott had a researcher with the first year he had activity, which was like 2019 or so, when he
Hmm.
first built the cabin, when a lot of the stuff started happening. He had some people out there, and he said one of them talked about finding a cabin out there that was like a decrepit old cabin. And last year we tried to find it, but we couldn't because there was so much snow. And this is in the opposite side of the bay from where the cabin is.
Hmm.
There was like a ridiculous amount of snow. We found a different cabin that was closer to the shore that looked like maybe it hadn't been used in, maybe a few years, but we just happened to, we wanted to hike that other side of the area just because I knew from last year we couldn't even access it. But flying the drone over there, I thought, my God, this area looks amazing. It's much more expansive than the side of the bay where the cabin is. I mean, it just goes on further up. So I thought, let's just go explore there. And then I'm like, well, if we find this cabin, maybe that'd be cool. And the funny story is we were literally about to give up. We were like, oh, we're never going to find this thing. I mean, moving in that terrain is so difficult. It
My
takes so
gosh.
long. And I gotta shout out this, but Damon, you probably won't believe this, but he literally had a hip surgery like 3 weeks before doing that hike with us. I mean,
I
the
mean,
guy,
it's almost like it's like
the
this.
guy
Like,
is a beast. I thought he was just going to hang out by the cabin.
oh my
If we
gosh.
radio, fly the drone up. If we see anything, get the thermal drone going. But he's
Mhm.
like, no, I'm coming with you guys. And I'm like, oh my God, are we pushing you too far here? And he's like, no, no. He kept going. So dude's total BA. Awesome guy. But
Shout out Damon.
yeah, so we went up this hill and it takes us so long just to get up there, and then we're like, yeah, we're never gonna find this thing. Who knows where this thing is? Maybe it's collapsed into the ground. And then my brother just happens to be looking, and he sees this window, and that was in the video. That was like the
Yeah.
moment after he saw it, and I was like, I cannot believe you saw that. And it took us about 20 minutes to get from where we saw it to get to the cabin because we had to go down into this ravine, cross a
Hmm.
creek, a fast flowing creek, and then get up to it. And that was like an unbelievable feeling. Just he happened to find it, and we spent some time around the cabin exploring it, and it was just a really weird location. And then when I mapped it, I finally was able to find it later on with Damon when he flew the drone over it. We were able to see where it was. I'm like, I
That's
never
what I
would have
was gonna
seen this
mention.
because
I
last year
thought,
when Eli was flying, we didn't see anything like that over there, and we flew all up and down there. So
yeah. But yeah, that's what was so cool was like having that, piece of, equipment with you, that technology where you guys are like, what does it look like from, you know what I mean? And I would have been down there like on the ground, checking everything out. I would never have been in my brain ever said, let's send up the drone and look from down. I never would have done that. When I saw that shot, when you guys did that, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so cool.
oh, it's amazing, and the tech is incredible. I mean, that drone, it's a DJI drone. I don't remember the specific model, but it shoots both in thermal and regular, uh, you know, footage
Mhm.
at the same
Yeah,
time because it's a dual.
you showed that in the
Yeah,
documentary. You showed that in the
exactly.
film.
Swapping between because it at
Back
the
and
same time it's
forth.
filming both, so it's really cool. When we did find creatures and animals, we were able to. You could see them, especially if it was daytime. You could see them both with the regular footage and the
Mhm.
thermal. But Damon, he's really skilled at it, and some of those shots he got with that fog and all that stuff, probably some of my favorite drone footage we've ever captured in general, just because
Yeah.
that ambiance. I mean, and that's with the title being Dark Coast, it worked really well with the kind of feeling of the whole vibe. Because
Mhm.
last year when we went out there, we had exceptionally good weather. It was sunny pretty much the whole time. We only had one day with a little bit of rain and fog. And this time it was like the opposite. We only had a couple days of sunlight and the rest was rain, but it added to that ambiance. And you say, well, this is a temperate rainforest. This makes sense. So,
That's right.
Dark Coast, just as a title, really worked very well. So that was awesome.
And so also too, I loved it when was it you and Damon or no, I'm sorry. Was it you and Damon who got you guys had just got to the other side and they're radioing you from the cabin saying, we're hearing knocks, we're hearing this, we're hearing that. And you guys are like, let's just I mean, you guys were so far away and you're like, we'll just throw up the drone and we'll go
Right.
check it out. I was like, that is awesome.
I know, and I was thinking, is this gonna be too far? Because the bay looks deceptively closer each side, but I
Yeah.
mean, it takes you like 10 minutes with the boat just to get over to the other side with the skiff. So yeah, it's funny. They started hearing this stuff, and then we were like, all right, just throw the drone up, and we didn't end up seeing anything. So we think probably it wasn't anything suspicious because sometimes you'll hear stuff, but it was kind of funny. But it's an amazing tool. I can't wait for these drones and this kind of stuff to get a little more affordable so that more people
Hmm.
can use it. It'll be like the thermals. They used to be super, super expensive, and now you can get
Right.
pretty decent ones for, somewhat affordable prices, obviously. But the drones, I think, will just be indispensable because they do so much that as boots on the ground, you just can't do. I mean, they
Yeah.
work great when you're approaching it with both. I mean, having the ability to throw that up or use it to try to find something is awesome
Right.
too. But they do a lot that we can't do, and it's just sometimes it's a lot easier to just sit on the deck of the cabin and just launch the drone up and send it into this direction than have to
Hmm.
hike up there and spend the whole day trying to get to a location. And it's obviously challenging. It's good to do that sort of thing, but the drone just I mean, it's a game changer for sure.
It is. Yeah. These last three films, I gotta say, they're absolutely amazing. Like
Thank
I,
you.
I fell in love with them, and especially the one that just came out the last couple days, Into the Fog. Like that I loved. I love the feel of that one. Not that the others aren't great, but that one, for some reason, has this amazing feel because you guys are literally trying to traverse some very, I mean, we're talking steep, steep stuff just to get to try to find this cabin, right? And you guys are seeing all of these impressions in the
Oh
moss.
wow, yeah, that was
It's
crazy. That was
pouring
weird.
rain. It's rainy, then it's not rainy, then it's like you guys were just going through every single thing that you can imagine, trying to find this cabin, and all of these tracks everywhere. It's not like you found one impression. There were like impressions and tracks like throughout that trip up there, huh?
Yeah, that was really weird. I mean, we had seen stuff last year, but we were following like deer trails and mountain goat trails, so there were general kind of impressions. And you could say, okay, impression from a bear, and we had found bear footprints like from a black bear up on the higher in the mountain in the snow. You could clearly see was a black bear. But this time, that side, nobody really goes over to that side very much, and we don't know anything about this cabin. I mean, from what we could tell, there's no direct path to it. I mean, it took us a good 10, 15 minutes just to get down what looks like a dried out creek. Getting down, there's no easy way to get up to the
There's no
cabin.
path
So,
there,
and it
yeah.
was technically on national forest land. It wasn't on private property because a lot of little coastal plots will be a couple acres that somebody owns. There's
Hmm.
nothing on it, but they'll be owned. Like with the cabin is on some acreage. But this mystery cabin was technically in national forest land. So um, it was really weird to imagine somebody built this. Was it a getaway place? Was it a hunting cabin? I mean, there's all this kind of stuff all across Alaska,
Yeah,
but those impressions were really weird because they were
yeah,
pretty
they were.
fresh and they looked like they were really good size too. We got scans of some that are like, for example, one of the apps I use, the 3D scanning app,
Hmm.
Scaniverse. We had some kind of interesting ones. This is one I can show here. I'll try to pull it on the screen and kind of show
Oh,
you.
wow.
You can kind of see
Oh,
it.
wow, that's deep.
Yeah, and it was so strange. I mean, and we found tons of stuff like that. So it's very undefined, of course, because it's this
Hmm.
moss that the whole ground level is covered in in this moss that's very spongy. So you can leave an impression, very heavy one, and it might stay there for a little bit and then pop out. But these ones seem pretty like they were pretty solid, and there was like almost
Yeah.
damage in some parts of the moss, and we kept finding that. So I can't, of course, say it's Sasquatch. Could have been bear for sure. I mean, they're going to leave similar kind of impressions, but the continuity of them and just the size of them. I mean, being larger than me, like size 10 and a half, 11. These were easily size 12 or larger, and we kept finding them all over the place on that side. So it was really weird, but yeah, the whole feel of that episode I really liked because I got to kind of show that sort of primordial environment. It's prehistoric, it's ancient looking, so
Yes.
the mood was definitely it's tough being out there. It's wet, but it doesn't. It's not like this grand kind of. I feel like the Alaska Highway And even the first episode of Dark Coast, it was more of like this grand nature to it, especially driving up to
Mhm.
Alaska. I mean, it's
Mhm.
everything's epic, like it's exciting, it's amazing. Whereas this was felt definitely more, I don't want to say somber, but a little more mysterious and slow paced. That's why it's kind of, the music choice is different. I always try to match the music up as best I can, but
No, it was great.
it's
It's
interesting.
it's
Yeah, it's
great.
just, I loved also just finding that cabin. That's just one of the things you get to show along the way, is
Mhm.
seeing that kind of stuff, and you just happen to come across it. I mean, that was complete coincidence. Like, we
Oh,
knew there was something there, but we don't know what we're looking for. And to
right.
find a almost 3-story cabin with what
Yes.
looked like car windows sideways on the sides, I mean, it took
It
some
was
ingenuity to build that place.
exactly, and like you said, there's, like, no visible path. Even when you went above it, with the drone,
You could see, yeah,
you could see there
nothing.
was no way there. There was no I mean, and we're talking it's up on a mountain. It's not like it's down by the ri by
No, it was
down
it
by
was
the
high
water.
up there. I mean, it was like, I don't remember the
How they
exact
even
elevation, but
how they
it took a
even
lot of
got
motivation. Yeah.
all of that stuff up there is blows my mind.
It just shows people the lengths they're willing to go to for something like that is just incredible. And
Yeah.
people kept joking, like, what if the person who built it sees your video? Hey, reach out. I'd love to hear more about what's going on, but I don't think that'll happen, because you never
Right.
know. Alaska is a weird place. There's a lot of weird people that hide up in the woods too, because it's the end of the line, right? They're
I
getting away from
I was
everything,
just
and
Yes, I was just
so who
gonna ask
knows?
you, were you guys nervous about approaching this? I mean, were you guys like, hey, maybe there's still somebody living in there, or maybe it's their footprints we were seeing, or
Yeah, that's
maybe
we
there's
did.
somebody who's not with us anymore who's
Yeah, I
there.
mean, we that did definitely cross our minds. I mean, there was three of us going up there. Obviously, when we're out there, we always travel in groups, just because
Mhm.
you got. I mean, you could fall into one of those pits and break your leg, and if you only
Right.
got one other person there with you, that's going to be
There.
a long haul to get down.
Yeah.
So having two is great, and just the weather and the other animals that are out there. Obviously, there's a lot of heightened threats, but yeah, we thought, what are we expecting here? We kind of cautiously approached it, and we realized there didn't look like there was anybody around. And then we started seeing that the entire front section had collapsed. So what we think is that it's on 3 stories, but it was on stilts, and the second floor technically, which would be the main area, and then they had a little
Mhm.
loft kind of above that. And there looks like there was a ladder underneath that they would put up to an elevated platform. That's how they would climb in, and that's where the front
Okay.
door was. Because obviously they have it higher, probably for bears, because bear, there was even bear damage at the bottom, trying to get in, or whatever, the bears are scavenging. So that whole front section had collapsed. Looked like part of the floor had collapsed, so we knew it was kind of decrepit. But once we realized, we went basically, I don't know how to describe it, but we went up this hill, and then this cabin ended up being to the left of us across a creek. So we were bushwhacking, hiking up, and then we saw it, and we had to cut then left to get up to it. But then we went down back straight from the cabin towards the bay. That's when we realized, there's no path up here.
That's
It is a bushwhack to get up there, and it was very difficult. And there was one box we found underneath the cabin for, I think it was, I don't know if it was a boombox or like a cassette player. I don't remember, but it was like a Casio or something like that, and it was dated 1995. So I don't
wow.
know if that means that that's the last time someone was there. Maybe, maybe not. But either way, that gives us an idea that there's some old school stuff out there. And 1995 is almost 30 years. So that's a long time, as crazy
Yeah.
as that is to say. But
Well, you
the one thing I should say is, just to address your first part of your question, if we were kind of nervous. Obviously, we didn't want it to be private property, so that's why we checked with OnX, the
Mhm.
app, and we saw it's on national forest land. So that might mean it may be illegally there, or maybe it was grandfathered in, but I don't know. We just kind of approached it very cautiously. You're in the middle of nowhere, Alaska. That's not really something you're expecting to find.
Mhm.
So it was kind of weird.
Mhm. Were you guys also surprised to see all of the caves that you were finding? Those little caves. Did that surprise you?
Not so much, I'd say, because that terrain there is just so rocky and hilly, and there's all that moss. So there's a lot of places where trees crash over and the roots come out and it creates little caves. But there were some big, huge rock overhangs, and I'm assuming those are rocks that at some point fell off of the mountains and now have trees and moss growing on them. But it was really cool to see that. There was the caves that were closer to the bay that had all that stuff stashed in them, like an anchor and other random stuff kind of stashed in them. And we thought at first maybe that was just had been washed in there by like a big creek runoff and was jammed in there, but it looked like it had purposely been placed there. So that again, it raised the question of who was using this. Was it abandoned? Does anybody still go there? We looked inside, and there looked like there were some old pasta boxes and some old stuff in there. So I really don't know. I mean, but there are people that do this kind of off-grid stuff in Alaska, but most of the ones I'm familiar with, they have some sort of an easier access to a cabin. Was it a hunting cabin? I mean, who knows? A lot of effort, though, for something like that.
Because of all of the interesting activity that you saw as far as tracks and things like that and impressions, are you planning on going back to check that area out?
I mean, I certainly like to. This was the longest point anybody had stayed out there in like one consecutive kind of trip, 2 weeks. I'd love to go out there. Again, obviously, it's just such a beautiful part of the world. It's incredible, and having access to it is awesome. So I'm sure at some point we probably will. I don't know if it's the first thing on our agenda for next year, because obviously I have a lot of other stuff in the works. You're already
planning.
Yeah, you got to plan it. But Alaska is, I mean, this time we really got to hit it strong, and just a lot of Alaska adventuring. So maybe it's still fresh in my mind, probably in a couple months from now. Also, because I'm editing it, I'm like mentally still in Alaska because I'm constantly doing these videos. So maybe in a few months when this all winds down, I'll probably be wanting to go back some point soon. But yeah, it's a faraway place, especially from the East Coast. So we'll see. I think to be continued, probably.
Absolutely. All right, we have a few questions for you. We only have you for a few more minutes, so let's see. Let's see. Mr. Brian Barber wants to know, did you have any more trouble getting into Canada or back into the United States?
It's a good question. Yeah, it was quite a few border crossings. There was leaving the U.S. to get into Canada, then getting back into the U.S. in Alaska from Canada, and then entering back into Canada from Alaska, and then back into the U.S. from Canada. So it's like 4 different crossings. I got to say, I think I was kind of expecting the Canadians to be a lot stricter off of all the stuff I've heard and some of the stuff over the past few years, especially with, COVID. They were very strict about letting people in. It was totally eased up now, but they were very friendly for the most part. I mean, Canadians have a reputation for being pretty friendly. And even with the firearm stuff, I had all my paperwork and everything squared away. I would say probably the most difficult border crossing I had was coming back into the U.S. from Canada the last time. So once I left, like I'm crossing into North Dakota, getting back to the lower 48. That was the longest border crossing. They stopped us to do like an agricultural check, and they asked us if we had been to a farm or bought vegetables in Canada and all that kind of stuff. But going out into Canada the first time, easy. Going into Alaska from Canada was really easy, especially once the guy asked me if I knew his colleague, that Michael Thompson, the Bigfoot guy. So that was cool. So definitely getting back in the U.S., the lower 48 was the most difficult, I'd say, but not too bad at all. Just pretty interesting.
Okay. All right. And Brian Barber has another question. Did the cabin look like it had been used maybe as a Bigfoot research cabin by someone?
I wouldn't say like Bigfoot per se. I mean, maybe, this person might have had some stuff happen and they started doing their own research, but I don't think it wasn't like built primarily to be a Bigfoot research place. It's probably a similar case like a lot of the other cabins that are out there. Someone wants to get off grid for a reason, or they just want a place to go and hunt and fish and stay in there. But again, being so far away from the bay is kind of unusual, because cabins like the one we were at or some of the other ones in the coastal areas, they're obviously, you have boat access, you have water access, you can go fishing, you can get in the woods quick. But it's a lot closer to the shore. It's not a hour bushwhack just to get up to the cabin. So I don't know what it was used for. I really don't. That's something we'll be left guessing probably for a while.
Yeah. And Jen wants to know, did you find anything interesting in the cached stuff under the rocks?
Good question. Not necessarily super interesting, just the layout was interesting. There were like 2 or 3 anchors under one of the rocks, which I was kind of surprised by why there were so many anchors I don't
Hmm.
know. There was one of the other caves had this metal, big orange metal box that was jammed under the rock so hard we tried to get it out, we couldn't. But nothing else really interesting or suspicious. I mean, we were, who knows what you're expecting, right? There's all kinds of strange stuff, but we didn't find anything unusual, and thankfully we didn't find anything creepy or disturbing. Any, like you said, people may have not be with us anymore. We didn't find any of that kind of stuff. For all we know, I mean, a person, if you die in that kind of environment, your body's probably not going to last very long. You've got porcupines and other scavengers that will basically
Right.
pick it clean, and it's such a humid rainforesty environment that that a lot of stuff about where are the bodies in that kind of environment. I don't think they last very long. You've got a lot of opportunistic creatures, and the weather will just disintegrate stuff. So
Yeah.
it's not a great place to go look for fossils, for example.
Right. Neoma Finn from Open to Doubt. She wants to know, what editing programs do you use?
So I primarily use Final Cut Pro, actually, believe it or not. I've used Premiere in the past as well,
Mm.
but I just kind of like Final Cut. It works for me at the moment. I probably will switch back to Premiere at some point, but I've been going with Final Cut now for the past few years, and I enjoy the simplicity, although Premiere is pretty good too. But it's just, I don't know, personal preference at the moment.
Yeah, but one more question from the Squatching Cowboy. Hey there, Joe. Good to see you. What kind of drone did you all use?
So, oh man, I really don't remember the name of the drone. I'd have to, I think, let me see if I can find this. I know somebody had asked me, and I had texted Damon about it, and I was like, what was the model of the drone? Because it's one of the, not higher up ones, but okay, it's a DJI Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced. That is the exact name of it. So that's the one he had. That's just, it's such an awesome drone. I want one. I mean, I think they're like 5, 6 grand. So it's they
Wow.
can be definitely cost prohibitive at the moment. But that's what I'm hoping going forward when that stuff lowers in price. I mean, again with those thermals, you used to some of those FLIR thermals back in the day, $10,000 plus. I mean,
Right.
really good units, and now you can get a pulsar for a really good pulsar for $1,000, $2,000. I mean, which still is a lot. I get it, but
Hmm.
relatively, like that pulsar, that price is
That's
better than the FLIR that would have been like 10 grand five
right.
six years ago. The way the tech goes. So imagine with these thermal drones, they're going to get smaller and quieter, and um,
I know I don't know. Like I said, you know me, I geek out on drone stuff.
oh, for
That's I'm
sure.
all I'm all like drones, 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 drones. So I'm excited because next week I'm going to be going to Ozark, Missouri. Uh, they're going to be doing it's like an expedition and conference there in Ozark,
Oh, awesome.
and uh, I'm just so excited because they're gonna have drone. They've got Randy Harrington and his drones, and
Oh,
I'm
nice.
just I am so excited to see how it works and what it does.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna be geeking out on the drone. I'm gonna be like, Randy,
Oh, it's
show me how
super
this thing
cool.
works. It's so cool.
It's so cool to just throw it up there and be able to see on the screen, where
Yeah.
you're flying over and what's underneath you and that kind of stuff. And I've been using them for years now, and it's just a great tool to even just scout an area out. That's like a primary function, and then obviously the footage is amazing. But yeah, the thermal drones, I just can't wait to get one with a thermal on there, because that being able to film all the stuff you're already kind of filming, but then adding the thermal aspect to it is
Hmm.
awesome.
Um, Brown Dwarf wants to know, when is Alex coming to visit Mount Shasta and Crater Lake?
Oh man, I'd love to get back out there. I've been to Crater Lake once when we were out there the first time, one of the first ever Beyond the Trail episodes back in 2021, when Eli and I were driving from Bluff Creek to Mount Hood area in Oregon. We stopped by Crater Lake. I mean, it was we swam in that water. It's so crazy blue. But Mount Shasta, I'd love to visit. I know Brown Dwarf, you're kind of in that area, like Southern Oregon, and he's buddies with like Tate and Jonathan Easley and a bunch of those guys that I like. So I'd love to hang out with you, man. Just got to find the time to get out there. I just want to get back to Bluff Creek too. I know that there's a fire actually at the moment very close to the film site and the Bluff Creek, so I'm really hoping that
Oh,
it doesn't affect the film site. But there's a lot of really bad fires up there right now. These guys have been texting me about it. It's like, oh boy, because if
oh,
we
I
lost
hope
the film site, that would be absolutely brutal.
that would be devastating to the community, actually.
I know it would be. I mean, the Sierra Sound site has already burned down a long time ago. I'm pretty sure with the Ron Moorhead stuff.
Wow.
There's the place with the Stacy Brown footage. The hurricane destroyed that a number of
Mm-hmm.
years ago.
Yeah.
So a lot. It's like it sucks when a lot of these places get destroyed. But I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
not really anything you can do about it, I guess, in that aspect.
Yeah. I went, Matt and I went with Stacy to to the film site, and it was, yeah, it was pretty messed up.
Just
It
like
was pretty
trees
messed up.
everywhere. Yeah, because we had asked him, I think,
Yeah.
too, to take us out there, and he was like, I mean, there's not really a whole lot you can see. Like, it's totally different than in the footage, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate, but
So Brian Barber wants to know, were the impressions that you found in a straight line, or were the steps staggered?
I'd say more staggered than straight line. I mean, it was this whole hill. The environment is so tough to walk through between all the moss and all the ferns and stuff coming out. Devil's Club everywhere, which is this
Ugh,
awful plant that just stabs. it's
horrible that
it's
place.
all over the place, and it's everywhere. From like my first times running into it were in the Pacific Northwest, and just tons of them up there in Alaska because it's all same coastal environments. But yeah, the steps were. It was weird because there'd be some that were like very close in a line, almost one, two going up, but never in a straight line. But I don't imagine a lot of these alleged Sasquatch trackways that are in a straight line tend to be in like a straight, nice area. This is,
Right.
I don't think anything would be able to walk up it straight, one after the other in an environment like
Mm.
that. So
Yeah,
it was just a mess
not
of
in that,
footprints. It wasn't organized.
not in that environment. Yeah, that was pretty wild. Miss Val, Southwest PA. She wants to know, do you have a dream location that you would like to explore?
Oh man, there's a lot. I think probably one though that sticks out to me because I that was one of the first things I ever read about and got interested in was the Himalayas, though the Yeti. So like Nepal and Bhutan up there in that part of Asia definitely is probably my dream location, just because again I first got into the stories of the Yeti. So that would be really cool. That's probably my you know reach
Yeah.
bucket list kind of dream location.
Neoma says the Devil's Club has some serious medicinal uses, though.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. It's just the pain when it stabs you because when you're falling and you accidentally try to grab on a branch and it turns out
Right?
to be
And you're
devil's
like,
club and your hand is filled with it. My brother said I think he had for like a month afterwards he had a couple pieces stuck in his fingers that he couldn't get out because he had accidentally grabbed it. And it just happens. I mean, there's so much of it all over the place. You kind of smack into it whether you
yeah,
like it or not. So yeah, not fun to deal with.
no. Alex, thank you so much. Let's see. Did anybody have any more questions? I think I hit all the questions. They're good questions.
Yeah, awesome questions.
All right. So what's coming up for you?
Whew, there's a lot. So just a lot of this Alaska stuff. So pretty much the
Mhm.
next couple months and in towards the end of the year, obviously the rest of the Dark Coast series. So there will be more episodes. Each one just kind of picks off where the other one left off. Bigfoot Beyond the Trail. Each one of those is kind of its own thing. The next one, if my calendar is right, is coming out the 24th of September. Yes, so the 24th of September. That's going to be interior Alaska Bigfoot stories, and then the month after that, it's going to be the Kenai Peninsula Bigfoot stories, and that's specifically just about those areas. And then after that, in between the Darko stuff, is our British Columbia stuff from back in May. So those will be their own episodes as well. I'm really excited for that kind of stuff. So yeah, it'll be definitely. There's a lot of that kind of stuff coming up. Just expect more Alaska stuff
It's gonna
until it
be
basically
great.
runs out.
Well, I put the links to all of those three that just came out, the most
Awesome.
recent ones. Also, your YouTube channel and Small Town Monsters link. So everything's in the description, guys. The show note in the description of the show. You can find all the links there to go and see all these amazing documentaries that we talked about tonight, plus more. They're, but you got to see them. They're fabulous.
I
Don't,
thank you.
yeah, don't miss it.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me on, and thank you for bearing with me. I know you had asked me. I'd had a few people ask me back in like June and May, hey, can you come on my shows? And I'm like, I will, but maybe in like towards the end of the summer because I just don't think I'm gonna have the time.
Yeah,
So there was quite a few that I had to put off, but always happy to come back, and
of
yeah, it was an awesome
course.
time.
I'll have to drive you crazy in a few more months, of course. Let's get after a few more films come out. I'll have to
Right,
have you
right,
back so we
right.
can talk about those.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much, Aleks. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your time. I know how valuable it is. And, I wish you nothing but the best and safe travels. And you and I will be keeping in touch as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and thanks to all the people watching and some great questions. And definitely keep in touch. And good luck in Oklahoma. Then it's Oklahoma, right?
Ozark, Missouri.
Oh, Missouri. Okay, I know that area is like there's a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff. Some of the mountains, the Wichitas are in both states. So, but that's awesome. But have fun with
Yeah.
that. That should be awesome.
I'm excited. I can't wait. Can't wait. Can't wait. Going to be hanging out with Shane Carpenter from Ozark Mountain Sasquatch and Randy Harrington and his whole crew. And oh, there is Shane. There he is right now. Thanks, Shane.
Awesome. Yeah, have fun. That's an area I have yet to get to, but I've heard a lot of good stories about Shane and those guys and the Ozarks in general. So
Yeah.
I'd love to get to Missouri at some point. It's on the list, believe me. That whole Oklahoma, Missouri, kind of Arkansas area is very much on the list. So
There's a lot of sightings there, a lot of things, lots of stuff there.
yeah,
I was so surprised how much stuff is going on in Missouri.
yeah, I've heard of stuff even Branson, like Bigfoot
Yeah, like,
attractions and stuff like that. So that's pretty
I
cool.
mean, Dog Man, Bigfoot, like you name it, it's all there. Zombie Road, like all kinds of crazy things. I'm like, what's going on in Missouri? But it is called the Show Me State, right? So I guess that's what it's
Makes
trying to,
sense.
you know.
Definitely.
Thank you again. Thank you so, so, so much. Um, can you wait backstage for me for a
Yeah,
couple
absolutely,
minutes
for sure.
yeah? Okay, awesome, awesome. Thank you so
All
much,
right.
Alex. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye bye.
Well, guys, it was another amazing show in the books. Thank you guys for being here tonight. I just want to very quick ask you guys to please, if you haven't ever subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel. I'm very close to 700 subscribers. I would love to get 700 before my 100th episode next week. It would just be such an amazing accomplishment for me. I would really appreciate it. And I just want to thank all my mods, everybody that's always in the chat, making sure it's nice, it's friendly, and it's amazing. And I just thank you guys so much. Then there's just one more little bit of information. If you guys want to support my channel, there's a couple ways you can do that. There's one way you can do it is by becoming a member of the channel. I would appreciate that. Any support that you guys want to give to me, I would greatly appreciate it. I just started putting some members only content up already, and there will be more members only content that will be coming. There are, I have to kind of do that with YouTube. So it's not kind of my choice, but kind of have to. But if you want to support my channel, that's one way to support my channel. There's other ways to support my channel as well, which is subscribing, liking, sharing, and commenting on my shows and my videos. And that's another way that you can also help support me as well. And I really, really want you guys to make sure you guys are back next week on September 11th. I do have at 7 o'clock, I've got a show with Chris Hensley, and we are going to be talking about some Bigfoot articles, and that'll be a fun show. And then on September 12th, we'll be at 9 p.m. with Michael and Matt, and they're going to be here celebrating with my 100th episode. And then while I'm away in Ozark, Chris Hensley and I did a pre-record for you guys on Green Bank, West Virginia. You don't want to miss that pre-record. Sorry, it's pre-record, but at least it's something while I'm away. And then when I get back, we'll have some fun and we'll talk about the trip and how fun the conference was and all of that. So thank you guys for being here tonight. And please, please, please remember to do what? Remember to spread love and kindness wherever you go.